other theories. Some people are claiming that this is all being done by the stalkers themselves with handheld directed energy weapons. I don't buy into that a whole lot, because if you look at the active denial system that shoots microwave for the Army, that's based on it's on a Humvee platform. It's basically a satellite dish on a Humvee. They are working on some handheld equipment that does the same thing, but it's bulky. A lot of the people in Texas, especially, we live in big areas in Texas, and a lot of the victims I've spoken with are on 5, 10, 100 acres. They don't have neighbors directly around them. There's nobody at their window or shooting anything at them through the wall. So that's one of the reasons that I basically went with what I was told by intelligence people, that yes, we do currently have the technology to do this to you via satellite. One of the other theories is HAARP, and I know you've had Nick Begich, who wrote a great book on HAARP, and that's another theory, and that's another probably plausible theory, and I would say it may even end up being a combination of both, but I'm fairly certain what it's not is your neighbor using a microwave oven with a funnel in it that's been converted to a weapon, like you see on a lot of websites.
How do they hone in, John, on the individual? How do they find that person?
Well, that's another area that we're doing some research on. Most people that experience this assume that they have a chip in them. We have scanned people, and I have found chips in people. I have several MRIs at my office that people have sent me that indeed there is something that looks like a very type chip in them. Some people are thinking it may be.
Right, I've got to jump in here. There ain't no chips. This interview is 10 years old. The active denial technology has jumped, and I say jumped. We have no idea on how good, inverted commas, this weapon of war is that's been used on people across communities and in their homes across the world. So I don't subscribe to the implants thing. That is completely fed out into it's completely fed out into the public as a way of automatically discrediting people. That's exactly what that is. Imagine walking into anywhere at all, or the many videos that you can find about people saying about implants and things, just impossible for me. Not in this day and age, We are now living in the age of ubiquitous surveillance, so implants for me is just completely out of the question.
Nanotechnology that's used to do the tracking. A lot of the research is pointing toward EEG recognition. Each person has a different EEG fingerprint or brain fingerprint.
Which is very much possible. Look, when someone's been harassed with these tools are in the range of anti-terrorism, advanced health tools, like very much upon the forefront of technology that should be here to either help or complete weapons of war. When somebody's been targeted with these things, it's there to simulate a mental illness. That's what it's there for, to simulate mental illness, and the only way that will work is it being an open secret across security services and health services, which I'll go into shortly.
Will. And by remotely detecting that EEG, you can actually pick George Norrie out of a crowd of 1,000 based on his EEG.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Are they doing this with do they ever stop on the individual, or they keep at it?
I have talked to some people where they have stopped, or it becomes less frequent. That more than likely is just them moving on to another target. This seems to be getting networked from state to state. This isn't one place in the United States that's victimizing everyone in the country. This is being done on a statewide basis, almost as if every state has a criminal organization who's been given access to this technology.
Which is exactly what it is. If, as I say, it is an open secret across industries, add in the very much normal and again open secret of institutional racism, implicit bias, and you just have real life. That's just how it is. And how we'll see this across society is within generated news, phantom terrorism incidents, a difficult area to get into, but it's just how it is. This is the grown-up world. This is how it is.
The families of the victims are angry at the lack of mental health care given to Kalakani. At the time of the attacks, he'd stopped taking medication for his schizophrenia and had even visited MI5's headquarters to ask them to stop controlling him. And there was a warrant out for his arrest for attacking a police officer. Here's our social affairs correspondent Stacey Foster on the failings.
This was the moment Valdo Kalakane's killing spree finally came to an end.
The videos just look perfect for the hyperbole, for the hype of it. You know, this story with the Nottingham stabbing is ramped up, obviously, because it's a hot button topic. You know, it's just so easy to do. My experience myself of just being attacked by police for nothing at all, and the reason they do that is because they can use this shield so easily.
But what we now know is that he'd been wanted by police for 9 months.
My honest assessment is that no, I don't.
My honest assessment is there's no one that can be running around the country in this day and age with the technology and security infrastructure we live under. There's no one that's going to be running around the country for 9 months. Cannot happen. It cannot happen at all. How do I know this? I know this because every step of mine has been tracked for no reason at all, completely innocent. Tracked for fun, you know, harassed for fun, effectively, because this is how police security services, this is how they justify funding. They justify funding by really organising these type incidents here.
Think that we could have done anything that would have made any difference and prevented what we now know happened on that dreadful day.
Barnaby Webber's mother says he has blood on his hands. But since recording that interview, the Assistant Chief Constable has issued a statement admitting that Nottinghamshire Police should have done more to arrest Kalakane. But mental health services had also lost track of him. Kalakane had been...
Nobody's ever lost track of. Look, if this was the 80s, 90s, then maybe I'd say yeah. But today we live with an interconnected system. Interconnected. If there's somebody that's on some mental health watch list or something, there's actually 24/7 just knowledge of their whereabouts between the local authorities, police, and their community proxies. How do I know this? Because this system has been used on me for nothing at all, nothing legitimate at all. And I'll get into the wheres and whys because it is a tool. It's a tool that's been widespread since the days of the Stasi. This is what our health services, this is their genesis, you know.
Receiving treatment since 2020 for paranoid schizophrenia. In May 2021, he turned up at MI5 headquarters in London to surrender to them because he believed they were controlling him. In August, he had...
Which very much looks like that when somebody gets on the rabbit hole of the gang stalking thing, that's not normal. That's because you've seen a collection of events that are just not normal. I'm not speaking for this guy because I don't know what this guy is about personally, but I can speak on the experience of how this policing infrastructure and community proxies will be relentless in trying their best to push someone to the edge. That's what I can attest to. And as I've survived it, and I'm able to call it out, that's what I can see through new stories like this. Because it's just too easy, too simple. Look at the characters in policing. I can pull up 50 stories right now of the questionable characters that are in policing. throughout the health service, and the story writes itself.
Admitted that he'd stopped taking his medication and had no intention of continuing with his treatment. A few days later, he assaulted a female police officer as mental health professionals tried to assess him. He'd been sectioned at this hospital 4 times after becoming violent, and each time he was discharged after being deemed safe to be treated in the community. That was until he went missing. When professionals visited him at home, they were told he was no longer at that address. And questions will now be asked about how someone with such severe mental health issues was able to disappear, but also crucially, what was then done to locate him. But 3 years before what happened in Nottingham, in 2020, a paranoid schizophrenic known to mental health services stabbed 8 people in Birmingham. In a strikingly similar attack, Jacob Billington was killed, and his best friend, Michael Callahan, was left with life-changing injuries.
Who was already in prison. All I had to do to keep the public safe was just not moving. You know, just doing nothing would have saved Jacob's life.
Do you think the streets are safe?
1 dead in Birmingham, 3 dead in Nottingham. Clearly not. All innocent victims.
Michael's mum says risk assessments are still not working to keep the public safe.
If you could read some of the things I've read about the person who attacked Michael, you'd just be absolutely astonished that he was allowed to be out and about. And, you know, it's not for me to do this, is it? It's for the systems and people in place. I mean, this could have happened to anybody.
The charity Rethink says
What actually happens to anybody is a system of reactive abuse, which is very well documented to push people to do extraordinary things. That cannot be downplayed or denied. It's very sad if innocent people are caught up in these incidents here. But again, I have to attest to the fact that there's people right now across the country, across the world, that have been hit with relentless series of reactive abuse, which is an open secret across police and health services.
it's clear that services are struggling.
But what we do know is that the system is incredibly badly stretched. We have 1.2 million people on community mental health waiting lists, and that pressure builds and builds and builds, and that's when those cracks tragically begin to open.
The NHS is now reviewing its processes, but what Rethink want is reform to the Mental Health Act, which the government has promised, but so far not delivered. Stacey Foster, ITV News, Nottingham.
It doesn't need any reform, because right now, as I say, there's an open secret which this is used as a tool which can be pointed towards anybody at all. That's what needs reform. There's no integrity, and the problem is only going to get worse.